guys, welcome to the second episode of the New Generation podcast. If you haven't checked out the first episode, the link will be given in the description below. I'm super pumped for this episode. I hope all of you are too. And please go like this video, comment what you would like to see next, and share it with all of your friends and colleagues so that they can help me too. Lastly, subscribe to my channel so I can help you all grow with the content that I put out with the side benefit of me growing too. Come on, let's head right into the podcast. Hey, I noticed you didn't go like, share, and subscribe. Come on, quickly do that. So let's get into the podcast without wasting more of your time. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Generation Podcast episode 2. Today, we have with us none other than our very own Rishabh Shah, and we are going to talk about the importance of the new generation in shaping the future of our country. Let's welcome Rishabh. Thank you so much for joining in, Rishabh. How are you feeling today?
Well, thank you for having me, Hitesh. I feel really nice to be here. Many congratulations on starting this podcast, and exciting, and raring to go.
Thank you so much. So, for our listeners who don't know Rishabh, I personally feel sorry for you, but let me give you a small introduction in 1 minute.
That's probably all your listeners, Hitesh. But yeah, go on.
But I will try to fit his introduction in 1 minute. I don't think I can do this, but let's give it a try. Rishabh is the founder and president of the IIMUN, the world's largest offline social network, which impacts over 10 million students every year. He's the founder and chairman of the Off-Claren group of companies. I hope I pronounced that right. He's the founder and trustee of the Taking India Forward Foundation. He's the founder and director of the First Time Voter Foundation. He is an international chess player, a motivational speaker, and author of his own book called The Open Mic, a social activist, a columnist, and his host of his very own show called Kuch To Corona during lockdown. And apart from all of this, even after achieving so much, he is one of the most humble people I've had the pleasure of having a conversation with or knowing personally. So let's get right into it. Thank you so much, Rishabh. I mean, I can't fit everything in 1 minute, but you are one.
You did basically. In a nutshell, it's like he fails so many times that he keeps trying his hand at different things. That's the description that you should be giving. But yeah.
If you call all of this failing, I don't know what all of us are doing in life, but let's get right into it. So Rishabh, let's get to the first question of the day. The motto of your foundation, the Taking India Forward Foundation, is to educate, elevate, and empower. What role do you think the youth plays in fulfilling this motto, and how important is it for the new generation to take India forward?
I think it's a very pertinent question, and in terms of a motto, that was just one of the that was a simple Google search. It didn't and the first three words that started with E. But no, jokes aside, the idea essentially the idea essentially of the organization is in order to empower young people.
Okay.
And your question being that how important is it to was it how
for the new generation to take India forward?
So how important is it for the next generation, the new generation, to take India forward is very simply, in India, we have about 50% of our population below the age bracket of 25. So that's approximately 600 million people. Yeah, Hitesh. And that's if you equate this and you follow international affairs and very, very closely and an enthusiast, so you'll understand that's like 10 times the population of France, or like that's roughly around 4 times the population of Russia. It's about twice the size of the United States of America. So that's just the number of young people below 25. To put this a little more into perspective, the average age today in China and in America is about 37. In Western Europe, it is around 45. And in India, however, the average age is 29. So how important is it, and how important is it for next generation to take India forward? I think they will play a big role. And even if you take numbers, say for example, the working population in our country, because I think people measure the progress of the country from the number of people who are working in the country. And that if you count that population between 15 and 65, that's roughly, if I'm not wrong, around 67% of our population is in that age bracket. So that's about 880 million people between 15 to 65. So how important is it for young people to take our country forward? Well, they've got two options. We've got two options as a country. One is all of these young people can contribute to the country. Second, you're going to have 880 million unemployed people. So, so we don't really have a choice. Young people have to take the country forward, and more specifically, the 600 million who are below 25 are the future. The problem also, and just quickly to elucidate, is the unemployment rate in our country is around 9 or 9.5%. It's 9.2% roughly is the unemployment rate currently in our country. So if these young people do not create jobs, if we do not do something about this, if young people do not take up the mantle themselves and wait for somebody else to come with a magic wand and say Wingardium Leviosa, that's not going to essentially happen. Young people really need to put their hand up themselves and chart their own roadmap, just like what you're doing with your podcast. So wish you luck, and it's quintessential that young people take India forward.
Thank you so much for that. Moving on, talking about how important is it for young people to take our country forward. You started the First Time Voters Foundation with the belief that good governance can affect change. And you have also been a mentor and helped a lot of young people join politics. So, how do we motivate young people to join politics? And how can we actually convince the youth that joining politics would help impact real change?
Again, I think a very pertinent question, because nobody wants to join politics here. And when you look at 10 young people and you ask them saying what's wrong in the country, they'll give you 200 things. But when you ask what do you want to do in the future, they will be, I would like to be a doctor, engineer, chartered accountant, a business leader, an actor, even a social media influencer, but I will not be a politician. So it's very important for young people to get into this profession, and the reason why it's important to consider this as a profession, and that's one of the biggest challenges. I think young people don't get into this into politics because, quite honestly, a normal person who graduates will get a salary of around 30, 40, 50, 60,000. But from a college like HR, I hope that is the case, and it's only increased. But the idea essentially is that a young person would get that much in terms of money when they graduate. But when it comes to somebody like a member of parliament, if you look at the fees that a member of parliament gets, it's around it's an abysmal 1 lakh rupees that a member of parliament is getting as a salary per month. Or an MLA in some states, they're getting around 20,000 bucks per month. So let's be honest, like for a young person to look at politics as a career option, if you're going to spend around 1 crore to 16 crore roughly on your campaign, if you're an MLA, you spend anywhere between 1 to 3 crore. If you're an MP, you spend between 3 to 16 crore. So if you're going to spend that kind of money, first you need to have that money as a young person, or you take a loan, you fight the campaign, you take favors. But at the end of the day, when you spend so much money, you're going to get back only about 1 lakh if you're a member of parliament. Or like I said, in some states, the fee for a member of legislative assembly is only 20. The amount of money that they get is only 20,000. So I think one of the biggest concerns for young people, whomever I've spoken to, they're like, politics is seen as charity. That you are in public office to do social good, which is true. But if you're trying to do social good, also you need to look after your family. You need to look after yourself. And if you're going to get 20,000 bucks as an MLA, then people would just prefer graduating from HR college and taking up a job. Yeah. So the idea is that I completely agree with young people when they say that it cannot be a viable profession. So I think one of the major things that people need to do in Parliament is try to increase the salary, which I think all of them would be happy to do. That would be one bill that everyone would pass. But I sincerely hope that they actually increase the salary, so that will excite young people to join politics. Because let's be honest, everyone loved playing cricket. But I remember my parents telling me, saying that you're not going to become Sachin Tendulkar. Well, I'm far from it. So the the idea is, but today parents are more open to their children joining cricket because they're like, if you land an IPL contract,
Correct.
you're yet going to be somewhat sorted in life. If you're yet going to play the Ranji Trophy, like a Ranji Trophy cricketer gets more money than an MLA does, which is ridiculous. Like, so the idea is that needs to be sorted. The second thing that I want to quickly touch upon is that, why should young people get into politics? And I'll tell you why. Because today in Parliament we have an average age of around 54. The average age in the Lok Sabha is 54. In the Rajya Sabha, the average age is around 63. Now, if you have a 70-year-old chief minister who's telling a 43-year-old aspiring politician, saying that, you're too, an aspiring chief minister is telling a 43-year-old, and you'll understand the case of which state I'm talking about, but I don't want to give names. But
That's okay.
the idea is that the rhetoric that was passed on in media channels and the narrative that was spread was that he's too young to be chief minister. Now at 43, if you're too young to be chief minister, you can't, then how are you going to lead? So you can't be 70 and lead a country which has 600 million below 25. So to all those young people who complain about the roads in Mumbai city, they complain that, the city is flooded. But then let's do something about it, guys. You can become a cooperator at a very young age. At 23, 24, you can fight elections comfortably with some amount of experience and win. Why do we elect people in parliament? I think roughly there are 230 odd people, 233 to be specific, if I remember correctly, who have criminal records. In our Maharashtra State Assembly, we have about 72% people who have criminal records. And in our BMC, that number touches almost 85%. So when young people complain, the thing is, you can only build a better country if you are invested in the country. So to all young people, you can bring about change. And Gandhiji said this, that, be the change you want to see. You won't necessarily fight the election in terms of a parliament, but at least start with a corporator level. At least start asking questions to your corporator and build a better country. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you completely answered my question. Thank you so much. And I hope that gives young people a reason to at least if not join, but at least question their cooperators who are working for their municipal corporation. You said one way. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, because I'm sorry to interrupt, because it's so important that young people contribute in policy making. Like, even if you're not contesting, at least start asking questions to the people who are elected representatives. Ask them saying, God damn it, you are a cooperator or you're an MLA. What are you doing about ABC? And then try to bring about that change by understanding that these guys are not interested in your, like, once you interact with the politicians, you'll kind of understand that 90% of them don't even really care about you and me. So at that juncture, somebody who actually is passionate will want to enter politics and say, I want to change the system. And I see young people doing that, but it's just that we need really a large number of young people entering politics and full-fledged politics.
That's
Sorry,
true.
you were saying something.
No, you mentioned something about young people investing in this country, which brings me back to an interview you had with Chessbase India, where you happened to mention that at a point in life you felt more westernized than Indian. And I have felt that too, and I know a lot of people in my age group that feel the same way. Now, this is one of the several reasons we see a brain drain in our country. What is it that we can do to prevent this phenomenon and inspire the sharpest minds of our country to shape our future instead of other countries' futures?
Because again, a very, very valid question. You're touching upon all the subject areas which I'm very passionate about, especially and even this one. I think as young people, we're far too enamored with the West, and I don't really blame young people for that. The idea is that when they're in grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, if you get an opportunity to study between Stanford and HR College, let's be honest.
Unless Stanford.
So because the idea is very simple. If you have the means in order to reach a Stanford, and if you don't have any pressing commitments to keep you back in India, people would choose a better education. So why is brain drain happening is the main reason that our politicians need to study, which I think there are many of these study missions which I have seen, which I've unfortunately been a part of in some capacity. But in all these study missions, they go to all these fancy places, sit and do things which I can't say on record. And nobody really, and everybody talks about brain drain, but nobody's doing jack shit about it. At least I think, and this is, I must take a second to commend Prime Minister Modi for the amount of things that he's done in order to make sure that Indians stay back in India. If you see the 1980s and the 90s, the amount of people that went abroad, we have seen a 210% decline from the 1980s to 2020 in terms of the number of people who are going abroad. But one of the things that yet people go abroad for is quality education. So I think that's where the problem is. The reason we have so much of brain drain, Hitesh, is because we don't have quality universities. On an average, I believe there is $17 billion that we spend, Indians spend on education abroad. So that's the amount of money that we spend on just sending kids abroad to study in fancy schools. Now, out of the 17 billion, which is a funny thing, close to around 9.5 billion is taken in loans, which basically means that people in India are very aspirational. We look at the West, we look at Stanford, and we say, if Hitesh didn't get an opportunity to study in Stanford in grade 13, let's make sure that there's a plan that Hitesh goes abroad for grade 16. Now, in Hitesh's case, he can fund his own education, but there are so many Hitesh's worldwide who probably may not be, across India, who may not be able to fund their education. So about $9.5 billion is the loan that in terms of education, just higher education, that people are taking. So what's the problem? Why so much of brain drain, and how do we address it? Just build quality, goddammit, universities in the country. If you have good quality educational institutions, and sorry to go on this one, but if only in HR, if only in HR college we didn't have Vipul Prakashan and Manan Prakashan, and we had we actually had textbooks, and I really admire HR and I credit it for making me what I am in a very small manner. Today, whatever little I am is because of HR. And the idea essentially is, but if we had quality education like what you get exposed to in the West, then we would be completely different products. And honestly, the funny part about this is we publish our own rankings, and this is the sad part. Like, we have the Times rankings, and I have nothing against the Times group. I think Vineet Jain and his company do a phenomenal job, but they publish their own rankings saying the time that ABC University is in the top 100, which is ridiculous. Like, if somebody were to tell me, saying, with no disrespect, and I'll use my own college as a yardstick, if somebody were to tell me saying my college is in the top 10 colleges of the world, I'd be like, come on, guys. Like, even so and these are the yardsticks that we see in order to these are the yardsticks that we basically see in order to map our progress, when actually the yardstick that we should be seeing is, like, say, for example, the QS survey that took place, right, or the Time Magazine surveys that take place. None of the Indian universities are ranked in the top 100. The closest that in the QS World University Survey of 2020-2021 that an Indian university comes to is 172nd rank. Now you tell me, if IIT Bombay is at 172nd, and we are going gaga over the IIT Bombay felicitation that took place, which was a really, really good thing. But that graduation ceremony that they did. But I have some students who studied in schools in India and then went ahead to pursue higher studies in universities. And they wrote back when I put up something on that group with them. They said, Rishabh, we learned this in grade 13 in our computer science class. So it's very hilarious to compare our universities to universities abroad, and therefore the brain drain. So if we really want to reverse the brain drain, people talk about 100 things, but the first thing is stop the kids from going abroad. Start building quality universities that actually impart education, and not just the same goddamn Manan and Vipul Prakashan, which you studied, I studied, and 10 years before me also people studied the same thing. And
I think 10 years after us also people are going to study the same thing.
And I'm like, how are you going to build world leaders if you're going to study from a 200-page textbook, which quite honestly is a rip-off in so many places of examples and anecdotes that are used in different textbooks, and the bad part about it is the English and the grammar is also not correct, which basically, so what are you actually teaching students in Mumbai University, in Delhi University with high cutoffs? And the other touch point on this real quick is to tell you about the fees, the average fees that you the average salary that you get. So the fee that you give and the salary that you get. Now, US universities have a brilliant program for scholarships. Every top university has X number of seats reserved on scholarships. Let's be very honest, in India, we have no seats for scholarships. We have seats for SC, for ST, for Sindhi quota or Gujarati quota or any quota. Basically, there has to be a quota. And on the basis of the quota, you get inside the college. And my question is, why don't you have scholarships for every course? How about 20% of the seats for students who cannot afford it, but they are actually deserving students to enter those universities? And honestly, then we'll see the sudden increase in level of quality education that students are demanding from professors. Because today in Bombay and in India, we've got colleges which really don't focus on this. And the salary that comes from these colleges, like I said, in HR, we're lucky to have, or in some colleges like DU colleges like St. Stephen's, or in Bangalore like Rice, you get some pay package which is decent. But in the vast majority, the average is roughly around 2.5 lakh per year. That is the salary that you get across colleges. And this is the better colleges. This is the grade 1 colleges. There's a survey done again.
Our college average is 2.5 to 3. So yeah.
So, and believe me, Hitesh, if you or me graduated from Stanford, the average is around $1,43,100 according to Stanford University. That's the average salary. That translates to roughly around 1 crore, 3 lakh approximately, if you count the inflation these days and the rupee to dollar. So if you're getting 1 crore and if you graduate from IIT Bombay, you get 10 lakh, then you tell me, would you prefer studying in Stanford? Would you prefer studying in IIT Bombay? So the brain drain is only because of two things. One is because we don't have quality educational institutions. And second, the employers who are employing people are seeing a vast divide between the quality of education that is disseminated and the job requirement, which is why they're not willing to pay people. Like the same company recruits from Stanford and pays that amount, but the same company recruits from HR college and pays us peanuts. So that's basically the two main areas. Yeah.
Right. That makes so much sense. Thank you so much for that answer. I hope that people are convinced to, I hope that we can build educational institutes, that the young people like us can in the future build educational institutes or educational programs that actually inspire people to stay back and convince these companies to pay them pennies on the dollar instead of pennies on the dollar to us. Right. So, Rishabh, you mentioned about how we need to build quality educational institutes and actually give that scholarship to people who can't afford it but should deserve it. So, now IIMUN has been helpful in spreading the idea of the one world while spreading the idea of India. Now, hypothetically, if we see real impact and real participation, not just from the urban population, but also from the rural population of our country, for people who need the education. And if we see this participation in education and in the corporates, how far do you think India can potentially grow as a global world leader if we inculcate all of them in one culture?
So now again, a very interesting and valid question. IIMUN tries to bridge the gap between rural and urban as much as possible. So in our own small way, we try to go to not just the metros, but to the smaller cities. And believe me, Hitesh, the people in the smaller cities are far smarter than us. Yeah, they're doing the Hyderabad, Bombay's, Delhi, Bangalore, and Kolkata's think that we've got it all covered. But honestly, when you go to like the Jamshedpurs and you go to the Agartalas, or even if you go one level, one level closer to home, closer to on ground, which is like places like Jalgaon and so on and so forth, you'll be surprised at the awareness level and the fact that these guys really want to learn. I do believe that 65% of our population, 65.3 odd percent of our population is approximately rural population, so to say. And this is some 2018, if I'm not wrong, or 19 World Bank statistic, if I remember correctly. But the idea essentially is that if you got that much population, which is rural population, then now just imagine that look at the numbers. Like if we can actually get that population to be sensitized to different issues, to be sensitized to the concept of one world, to be sensitized to the concept of unity. There is no Muslim Hindu divide. If we actually try to bring these people up in terms of giving them the opportunity, that's the only thing that they need. Because if they get the opportunity, believe me, these people get much better, they give much better solutions than you and me would give in, say, an MUN conference or a debate. Because honestly, these are the guys who actually are thinking. They may not be as articulate when it comes to speaking in, say, English as, say, you and me. Some are better than us, but the idea is when you give them the freedom of talking in their regional language, like in some small places in Orissa and in Bengal. I remember having traveled there long ago in 2013-14, and I was shocked that as to the kind of awareness that they had and the kind of solutions that they gave. And believe me, that's why we're not too surprised that today's prime minister comes from a small town. And not somebody who grew up in Mumbai, Delhi, studying in affluent places and affluent schools. So the idea essentially is the rural population is the population that actually is going to take the country forward. If you're looking at a 24% slump in the economy, that is primarily because we don't pay too much attention on the rural areas. We're trying to build an ecosystem. And again, I like I said, that's it's been considerable progress, but the only problem is that it's one thing saying a statement in media and making an announcement and a plan. The second thing is actually the last mile delivery. And there have been a lot of fancy plans that the Niti Aayog comes up with, but the only thing is how many actually reach the last person. Nothing reaches the Aam Aadmi, both the party and the Aadmi. But the idea essentially is that the last person is not impacted, and because they're not impacted, we're not being able to progress. So honestly, Mumbai can't get any more urban. Like, I mean, you'll build the coastal road and all of that jazz, and it's very nice. It's great. You're going to upgrade us by 10%, 20%, 30%. But when you look at villages, when you look at the 100 Smart City program and all of that was once conceptualized, if that actually comes and happens on ground, on paper happens, on paper happens to on ground, I fundamentally think that you'll see a paradigm shift in our country. 65% of our population is a large number. If we can even transform 10% of that 65%, we're going to skyrocket upwards. And this is not me saying, this is Raghuram Rajan who actually gave a statement. He said, the real strength of the country, something of the effect, the real strength of the country lies not in our urban cities, but in developing the rural centers. And I completely concur with it. And if we somehow focus on that, if somehow actually the philanthropy actually reaches there, even entrepreneurship reaches there, I think we will progress tremendously. And if we can build indigenous industries, if that Real Skill India program, for which I think lakhs of crores of budgets are set aside, I don't remember the exact number, but that Skill India program has so much money that has been set aside. But I know this as a matter of fact, can't say this again on a recorded program, but that lakhs of crores goes into two places. One is the pockets of the politicians. So the order comes from the top, which is great. And that kind of altruism is great because Prime Minister Modi sets that vision, and it's great. But by the time it reaches the last person, and you're looking at skilling rural India, the person in rural India is yet learning carpentry skills on a simple saw, when actually the budget sanctioned for him learning carpentry skills was 10x, if not 100x. So the problem is the taxpayers' money, just as now, because we have a young educated population, you see many of them asking questions. The problem is, at least it's it's only some percentage of the population that's beginning to ask these questions. And I'm saying don't question just this government, but also question the previous governments who actually held PhD degrees, double and triple, and were in power, but only sought to fill their personal coffers by emptying the coffers of the Indian taxpayer. So the idea is both the Congress and the Bharatiya Janata Party need a major reform. And the only way that reform is going to come about is through people listening to this podcast and hopefully getting motivated. But no, but it's by young people actually joining politics, which brings us to the first point that you touched on. But yes.
Right. So one of famous journalist Shekhar Gupta also said that India fails in one thing, that is building new cities in rural areas. Even with the Amravati project in Andhra Pradesh, that completely failed because of politics. One person took over the other person's dream and all of it went into shambles. And the one city that we wanted to build wasn't able to come in light.
No, and what you said is so correct. It's so true, because what Shekhar Gupta says and what you were saying is, and it's India much is unfortunately like it's like this glass jar in which there are a lot of crabs. And the sad part is one crab is trying to come out on top and do something good for the rest of the country. The other crabs are more interested in pulling that crab down and saying that, "पर आप क्यों आगे जाएंगे, हम आगे जाएंगे." And the problem, this unfortunate reality which exists across in all countries, that that the political parties fight and so on and so forth, but the kind of bipartisan statesmanship that you saw, say for example, when President Obama selected Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State, somebody who he ran against for the Democratic ticket. Like it's practically that you ran against somebody, you competed against them, and now you're including them, which is the kind of inclusiveness that you want in Indian politics. Where is that possible? Sachin Pilot, and taking his name, was thrown out from government, and I hope it doesn't cost me too much, but was thrown out from government. And today, much of his party says we welcome him with open arms. But where are you welcoming him with open arms if you're not giving him any place in the party? And the same thing goes for Jayant Sinha in the BJP. Where are the young leaders? The young leaders are absent. Unless and until a young leader actually toes the line of the party high command, young leaders can't make it in these political parties. That's the sad reality. And therefore, the vision of transforming the rural India is left to a Zoom conversation between Shekhar Gupta and his audience, or in this case, a Zoom conversation between Hitesh and a person who just has too many dreams and very little time.
Right. Thank you so much for that answer, which brings me to the last question of the day. Rishabh, on your website, which all my viewers should know, Rishabh has his very own website.
Which don't go and see it. There's nothing in it.
On your website, you have a very plain and simple bio saying that you are just a young person helping other young people. So in order to help young people, what is that one advice that you would want to give to the new generation?
What's the one piece of advice that I'd give the new generation is, honestly, be the change you want to see. Because quite honestly, if Gandhiji were alive today, honestly, he would look at the state of our country, the state of the economy, the state of the political system, and he would only lament the fact that this is not an India that he envisioned. It's an India that is divided, an India that is reeling under severe economic duress, whether or not governments past or current accept it. And at the same point in time, it's a country that is going to be a country that will not be able to make the maximum of its demographic dividend if we do not take positive criticism, make policies which actually reach the Aam Aadmi. And honestly, the only set of people who can bring about this change are young people. Because if young people come together and they say that, this is what we want, any party, any government, any system will automatically have to pay attention to what they're saying. The problem is this, that young people are also getting divided. Young people are getting divided because they're being swayed by narratives on primetime television and on YouTube channels where you've got a good-looking YouTuber saying a lot of things from some foreign country, where he's not staying in his own country, he's not traveled to any Gao, but he is staying in Austria and Bulgaria without taking any specific names, and is making statements on what happens in Jalgaon. But go to Jalgaon first, talk to the people in Jalgaon, and actually understand the problem out there, and then try to unify uh, young India. And I sincerely hope there is a Messiah who is amongst this 20 to 40 age brackets who can actually unite young people and make them believe that be the change you want to see. Because young people, if they dream to achieve something, if they dream with their eyes open and if they believe that they can achieve something, they will definitely achieve it. The good part about being young is you are naive and you are altruistic. You believe that you can change society. And what we do in all these MUN competitions and debates, and we say the same thing: be the change you want to see. Don't become armchair activists. Don't become business leaders with only one ambition, which is capitalizing on wealth. But be change makers in your own way. So the idea is you may not enter politics. And you said this was the last question, so I'll try to summarize all of what I said. You may not enter politics, you may not enter elected office, you may not dedicate yourself by serving in the army or the armed forces. But the idea is, whatever you hope to do in life, first believe in yourself that you can go ahead and achieve the stars. Because quite honestly, Elon Musk quite literally hoped one day that he would achieve and reach the stars. And believe me, he's the closest to reach the stars uh, amongst all the people on planet Earth. The idea is, if you can only dream with your eyes open, you will kind of understand that you can achieve that dream. And whatever you do, please understand that you must give back to nation building and to building a borderless world. Because at the end of the day, if you don't contribute to nation building, you're going to keep criticizing the government in power with little to no um, influence on the outcome, but simply rambling on just like I am. And I simply hope that the next leaders that you bring on this podcast are people who are trying to bring about a paradigm shift, not just speaking about bringing a paradigm shift like me. I only speak about it. I leave the doing to the others. But I sincerely hope that young people can actually now pick up the mantle, the ones who are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, the ones who are in college today. They actually pick up the mantle and do phenomenal things, because I think it's their time. And if they can do it, then they should. Because if they don't, then 20 years from now, India won't be the superpower that we were positioned to be. India will just be a country which everyone has left, and somebody staying in Finland, somebody has a Canadian citizenship, and we're celebrating the said fellow on every cinema platform, without understanding the fact that even he would at a drop of a hat flee the country and stay in Canada. This is the sad reality of our country, and young people are its only hope. Let's make sure that young people are educated in the right way by providing good facilities for education and by building a robust country. And the only people who can do it are not politicians, but are young people themselves. So don't wait for a Messiah. Be the Messiah yourself.
Thank you so much, Rishabh. Thank you so much for that answer. I hope that whatever you said helps the new generation. It surely has inspired me to do more for our country, and I hope it inspires the new generation to do more. Thank you so much for joining in this conversation with me today. I hope this helps a lot of people. Also, before we go, do you want to ask my viewers to share and like this video or podcast?
So I'm not a social media influencer, but I'll do as Hitesh says, because he's been very kind. So please go like, share, subscribe to his beautiful channel, podcast, wherever you're watching this or hearing this. Phenomenal guy, a lot of enthusiasm, and quite honestly, the belief that he can change the world. He's being a messiah in his own small way, and the least we can do is like and subscribe and help this guy out. Hitesh, many congratulations for doing whatever you do.
Thank you so much. Your words mean a lot to me. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I'll see you at the next episode.